We are now in study session 4, Theories of Attitude. Attitude is a central and indispensable concept in social psychology. It guides individuals in their day-to-day interaction with the world around them and enables them to organize the world in a coherent manner. The study of attitudes has revealed that we have attitude towards practically everything and everyone in our world. Attitudes towards cars, dresses, food, jewelry, religion, race, and so on. Attitude is defined as a learned and relatively permanent way of responding to an object or person in a favorable or unfavorable way. It has also been defined as a positive or negative evaluation of an object or person. For anything to be considered an attitude object, it must possess 3 components: cognitive components, emotional or affective components, and behavioral components. Simply put, these 3 components refer to our beliefs or cognitive evaluation of an object, our feeling about the object, and our behavior towards the object. Many theorists have advanced theories to explain how attitudes are formed and how they change. In this study session, we will devote our attention to studying some of these theories. When you have studied this session, you should be able to discuss the concept of attitude and its components and compare different theories of attitude and their practical application in our social world. Learning theory of attitude. Learning theorists see attitude formation primarily as a learning process. That is, we learn attitude the same way we learn everything else. As we learn new information, we learn feelings, thoughts, and the actions associated with them. Generally, learning theories see people as reactors to phenomena rather than initiators of activities. According to this group of theorists, people are primarily passive, while their learning depends on the number and strength of the positive and the negative elements previously learned. One approach that learning theorists have adopted to explain attitude formation is a classical conditioning approach. Learning in this approach is based on the principle of association. In this situation, learning takes place when 2 or more stimuli appear at the same time and at the same place. Franzoy made it clearer by saying that learning through association occurs when a neutral stimulus is paired with a stimulus that naturally produces an emotional response. For example, children may develop negative attitudes towards the members of a particular ethnic group if they grow up listening to their parents who constantly make negative evaluative statements about the members of the ethnic group. Another approach that evolved from the learning theory perspective of attitude formation is operant conditioning. Learning with this approach rests on the principle of reinforcement. The assumption here is that behavior is strengthened if followed by reinforcement. It is weakened if followed by punishment. This means that if a valued reward is given for an action towards an object, the action is likely to be repeated in future. But if punishment follows such an action, the likelihood of repeating the action is remote. For instance, if a child receives a gift from her parents for good performance in her grades, the child may likely redouble her efforts to maintain the position or improve the performance. But if no appreciation is shown for her performance, it may dwindle and later become very poor. However, Rowe, Chasen, Preston and Sherman said formation of attitude may not always be contingent on direct reward and punishment alone. Rather, attitude can be formed through indirect means of observational learning. In other words, people form attitudes when they observe others being reinforced or punished for particular behavior towards attitude objects. Let us now take a look at functional theory of attitude. While some theories of attitudes attempt to explain a concept by focusing on various components and how they shape attitudes, the functional approach is more interested in the functions that attitudes perform. The major assumption of the functional theory is that an attitude serves a useful purpose, and when it is no longer useful, a new attitude is embraced. That is, people have goals they aspire to attain, and in their attempt to attain these goals, they develop and change their attitudes based on the degree to which they feel the attitudes satisfy their psychological needs. This theory thus stresses the need to understand the underlying function an attitude serves before the attitude is changed. Functional theory of attitude. Functional theory of attitude change sees people as active and not passive participants who are able to decide needs and the type of attitude that will satisfy them. Thus, it is possible for individuals to have similar attitudes toward a particular attitude object for different reasons. For example, an individual may join a political party because of the party's manifesto, while another individual may join the same party because it is the party in power. According to Kant, attitudes serve 4 functions, and these functions lay emphasis on different components of attitude. 1. Knowledge function. Knowledge function helps us to have an understanding of our world and form a coherent view based on our needs to understand the world and to give structure and order to the social environment. 2. Ego defensive function. This function protects the self-esteem of the individual, helps to avoid emotional conflicts by not accepting certain basic truths about him or herself, accepts compliments and rejects criticisms. Basically, ego defensive function assumes that attitudes serve as defense mechanisms. 3. Adjustment function. This is an attempt to minimize anxiety arising from inconsistency by minimizing penalties and maximizing reward. And 4. Value expression. Value expression has its origin in the humanistic school of thought. It states that individuals always support attitude they cherish because it gives them pleasure expressing their inner value. For example, going to school will be an expression of a desire to acquire knowledge. Cognitive dissonance theory of attitude. In the development of the study of attitudes, cognitive consistency theories have proved to be the most influential. This set of theories was introduced by Fritz Heider in 1946 and defined as a tendency to seek consistency in one's cognition. In these theories, it is assumed that incompatibility between thoughts and actions can cause discomfort, which people then attempt to reduce or eliminate. Cognitive consistency theories include congruity theory, Heider's balance theory, cognitive balancing, cognitive dissonance theory, and many more. Among all these theories, the cognitive dissonance theory propounded by Leon Festinger is the most influential and most researched into in attitude study. We shall focus on this theory in this section. According to Festinger, cognitive dissonance is a state of psychological discomfort when there is a basic incompatibility between thoughts and actions, or between two or more sets of attitudes or opinion that people hold. The theory focuses on the consequences of the incompatibility between two related cognitions. According to the underlying assumption, we often engage in irrational and maladaptive behavior in order to maintain cognitive consistency. Once there is a feeling of dissonance, we are motivated to reduce it, and Franzoy identified 5 ways through which cognitive dissonance can be reduced. 1. Changing attitudes. 2. Adding cognition. 3. Altering the importance of the discrepancy. 4. Reducing perceived choice. And 5. Changing behavior. Self-perception theory of attitude. This theory was made popular by Daryl Bem, 1972. It emphasizes on how behavior shapes attitudes. This is a radical departure from the mainstream popular attitude theories that state that attitude determines behavior oftentimes. According to the self-perception theory, people look at their own behavior and form their attitudes by observing what they do. In such a situation, people infer that their attitudes the same way. In such a situation, people infer their attitudes the same way they infer other people's attitudes. By implication, Bem's assertion means that we often do not actually know what our attitudes are, but instead simply infer them from our behavior and the consequences under which the behavior occurs. The summary of the self-perception theory is that attitude follows behavior. That is, the more interest a person has in a particular cause, the more strongly she will believe in that cause. In this study session, we noted that attitude is a central concept in social psychology. It is made up of 3 components which help people to evaluate objects and persons in negative or positive manner. Learning theorists state that attitudes are learned and that learning is made possible through principles of association and reinforcement. Functional theorists, on the other hand, state that attitude is best understood in terms of the function it performs. We also examined attitude cognitive dissonance theory, which focuses on the consequences of the incompatibility between 2 related cognitions, which we try to reduce in order to maintain balance. Meanwhile, the Bem's self-perception theory radically disagrees with other theories. It emphasizes that attitudes are shaped by behavior. And that brings us to the end of study session 4. Thanks for listening.